Hello there, this is Yana Smakula for WPlus9 and thank you for joining me today. In this video, I'm making a simple pencil-colored and heat-embossed holiday card. I picked two stamp sets from WPlus9 for this project. Be Merry stamp set, my sentiment comes from here, and Holiday Boughs set. The greenery is from this set. I'm starting to work on my card by placing a sentiment onto a gray cardstock panel that is cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I'm using a stamp positioner today because I will be doing some coloring with colored pencils and later heat embossing over my coloring. So if you want to be able to recreate this look, you'll need to use some sort of a stamp positioner for your project, although this step is not very important and the coloring of the sentiment can be skipped for the most part. I'm stamping this image in WPlus9 Silver Lining ink color onto their coal mine cardstock, and I'll use this ink for all of my stamping today. I picked this color as I just needed to use some sort of ink that would be visible enough for me to color over. You can use a lighter ink color for this too. I probably wouldn't use black or pigment ink. I would stick with a dye ink for this kind of stamping and coloring. Next, I'm using my Polychromos pencils from Faber-Castell to color parts of this sentiment, and you can also use Prismacolors for this. I'm using red pencils to color the banner, and I'll also color portions of the letters in the word Merry. You can definitely skip this step and heat emboss your sentiment right away. I colored it first because I wanted to add a bit of red to the word Merry, and also because I wasn't planning to later foam mount an identical red colored banner on top. Another reason for doing my coloring prior to heat embossing for this particular card is it's nearly impossible to color next to a white heat embossed line and not actually color that line itself. So I find it easier to stamp the image using a light color of ink, color it with pencils, and then heat emboss the outline with whatever color of embossing powder that I want. It's white in this particular example. You can also offset the heat embossing for an interesting look if you want. Like I mentioned, at the end of this video, I foam mounted an identical banner over this colored banner, and I did that because I felt the red wasn't vibrant enough. It was a bit too dull red for my taste for this particular card, and it didn't quite match in color to the red berries that I added with Nuvo drops. But let's go back to what I'm doing right now and not jump ahead. I also used images from the Holiday Boughs set and stamped pine needles all around the sentiment, framing it. And I used the same dark gray color of ink. I used 4 different images for this and stamped them onto my card, making sure to have each branch go outside the edge of the panel. I love this trick and this look. It's easy framing with minimal effort. Next, I once again grabbed my Polychromos pencils and picked several green colors I wanted to use for this card. Now, whenever I work on a new color of cardstock, I always test the colors of my pencils first to see what they will look like on this particular color, because these pencils will always look different on black, white, or colored cardstock. So I just flip my paper upside down and use the back side of the paper to test the colors. Once I figured out what colors I liked, I used them to color over the gray stamped images. Now, I wasn't very careful coloring these, nor was I doing any blending. I used just one color for each branch and simply made sure to color over the gray stamping. I did go outside the lines and made these branches look a bit like they were hand-drawn. If you look closely, you'll notice that the pencil coloring didn't cover the gray stamping completely, and the gray stamping actually added a nice shading effect to each image. Once my coloring was done, I replaced the panel inside my stamp positioning tool. I prepped the panel with an anti-static powder and inked up the image that was still mounted on the door of my tool as it was before with clear embossing ink. I stamped it. I added white embossing powder. Now, I did get some stray embossing powder particles on my panel, so I cleaned those up with a dry brush. I also prepped the area around the sentiment with an anti-static powder tool and stamped several berry branches and also covered them with the white heat embossing, and that's when I actually heat embossed the panel. I did not heat emboss the sentiment and the berry branches separately as I wanted to expose this panel to as little heat as possible to minimize warping. I also stamped additional pine needle branches and also white heat embossed those to add more white to this card. I felt like the background paper that I picked was a little bit too dark gray, and I wanted to add as much white as possible. To add a little bit of red to this holiday card, I used Nuvo drops in red berry color and added tiny red drops onto my white heat embossed branches. At the same time, I felt like this card needed a bit brighter red banner in the center, so I repeated the steps that I took to recreate the banner, but this time on white cardstock. I cut it out right up to the edge and foam mounted onto my card. And by the way, I used the exact same pencils, the exact same red colors of pencils to color it, and you can see how much different the two banners look. I adhered this panel onto an A2 top folding card base, and this finished my project. I definitely enjoyed creating the subtle greenery look or background that you see on this card, although the same effect can be achieved using pigment ink. I personally don't always like to use pigment ink as it takes a long time to dry, so I used colored pencils here. I hope you feel inspired to create and will give this idea a try. If you do try it, please tag me in WPlus9 on social media so we can take a look at your project. Be sure to subscribe to this channel for more inspiration if you haven't yet done so. If you are subscribed but are not receiving new video notifications, please check the bell icon on the homepage of my channel to get notified every time there's a new video out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!